Welcome to Alpha Wolf's Den. It's here that we seek enlightenment. Alpha Wolf Trading recognizes that the most successful companies in the world at one point had no earnings. There's a lot more to a company than just its earnings report. That's why here at Alpha Wolf's Den, we interview executive teams. We want to get to know management. We want to understand the vision, the mission, the strategic drivers, the plan. We want to separate fact from fluff. This is not a paid for promotion interview. This is solely wanting to know the company's vision, mission, their critical success factors, their strengths, their weaknesses, their opportunities, and the threats. We want to know the long-term objective and the tactical initiatives that leadership plans to implement to achieve success. We want to know about the company's debt, the cap structure, what it's going to take for them to become self-sustaining and stop burning through cash. We want to know management's previous failures, challenges, hurdles, how they overcame them, or what they learned that they can apply in their current role. We're trying to identify the risk and the reward. And oftentimes, it's strong leadership that makes the difference between success and failure. Here at Alpha Wolf Trading, we are looking for the hidden gems. And I hope you enjoy this interview because this is one of those companies that I think could be a hidden gem. Please understand that this is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is not financial advice, and I am not a financial advisor. Any investment that you decide to make in any security should be based upon your own due diligence and opinion. Hey, what's happening, everybody? Tim from Alpha Wolf Trading coming at you with another fantastic interview. This one I'm really excited about. It happens to be in the medical cannabis space, and it's a unique story for many reasons. Number one, it's a Colombian-based company. It does trade on the OTC. Khiron, KHRON is the company name, and the ticker symbol is KHRNF. It's traded on the OTC exchange, and I am pleased to have Alvaro, the CEO of Khiron, here. And Alvaro, we've been talking now, I don't know how long has it been, maybe almost a year.
Maybe almost a year. Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Been following the story. I am a shareholder, and I am actually looking to increase that position, but whoever your market maker is making it challenging on me. But why don't you do me a favor and tell me a little bit about you, your background, and how you got involved here, and what you see as the future for Khiron in the next 6, 12 months and years. For what's your vision?
First of all, Tim, thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. I think it's been a little bit over a year. We've met virtually, physically, and I've been able to convey to you why I'm so enthusiastic about the company that I founded almost 5 years ago. And I think this year is going to be tremendous, taking on everything that we've been building the last 4 years, particularly last year, to become really what we want to do. And I would start with that because our vision of the world is that medical cannabis is not a fad. It's not something that's just going to stay there for a couple of years. This is a true disruption for the pharmaceutical industry. And we are in region like Latin America and Europe, where having that first mover advantage, really focus on the patient and making sure we can do everything possible to make that patient's life feel better and try to disrupt this opiate crisis that it's happening everywhere. I think that's what the real opportunity long term is. Our company is extremely focused on medical cannabis, very focused on bringing and improving the quality of life of people. We have a significant first mover advantage in Latin America and in places like the UK. And I think that that's where the opportunity lies. This is not something that's just about quick consumption, that people will forget about this. There will be always people with pain. Always there will be people with neurological conditions. And I think we're all tired of being fed the same poison over and over. And here comes this plant that's been around for 8,000 years, that if we can give it a real medical use, patients will like it. And I think the fact that Khiron itself has been proven that that model works over and over in the worst of conditions like what we're having right now with COVID, that's really what's exciting about what we're doing. I mean, we're today selling Colombia, in Peru, in Brazil, UK and Germany, hopefully soon, very, very soon in Mexico. And we are probably the unique company that's, seed to sale focus, patient creating brands, patient loyalty, patient acquisition. All of our, operational metrics are always increasing because we are obsessed with access. I am obsessed with the fact that we need to make sure that every patient in the world that can have this medication can have it. And because we haven't focused ourselves in the commodity aspect of it and try to sell the cheapest cannabis possible to whomever wants to buy it, but rather we've been focusing on creating those relationships with the doctors, with the patients, with the insurance companies, we've been able to grow very fast. And I would say that creating such a high barrier of entry that it's very exciting for us in the next couple of years. That's sort of to start from the last question to the first. But I grew up in the engineering world, so I've never been involved in the cannabis or pharmaceutical industry, but very much in engineering and building real things. I think when Colombian government legalized medical cannabis about 5 years ago, what was appealing to me is that this is an opportunity to create change. We live in a region that has been battered by all the bad aspects of drugs all our lives. I do live here in Colombia. I am Colombian American, dual citizenship. I had the opportunity to study in the United States, my undergraduate, my master's, and my MBA in Georgetown. I always saw the opportunity to try to bring and create something new that could change the life of people in Colombia and people in Latin America. And when we saw this opportunity, we said, well, of course we can sell cheap cannabis. That's like saying we can grow cheap coffee. Of course we can do that. But what's really interesting, though, is that we're in a region that has 650 million people, that has more than 75 million people with chronic pain and anxiety and depression. And all these people have to take imported opiates to treat their conditions, which makes no sense from a health point, from an economic standpoint, and from a country building point of view. And that's why we created the company that's going to be focused on the end consumer. 2 years ago, we decided to move into Europe because, we felt that everything we've been learning about how to prescribe cannabis, and I would say today that Khiron is one of the few companies in the world that really knows how to prescribe cannabis. If there's one thing this company knows how to do is to convince doctors. So why don't we take everything we've learned, take it to a much bigger market in terms of economic power, and start taking our brand and our know-how there. And right now, what we're seeing is a unique company that's, having a first mover advantage in Europe and Latin America, while everybody else is focused on Canada and North America. We're making our niche of the world, and one day, we'll be able to to have a real global conversation. I think that's what Khiron is all about. Sorry for the long explanation.
Oh man, I love it. That was, you hit on so many things I was hoping you were going to hit on. So let's talk real quickly about the lesson you learned from coffee. Right.
I think, Colombia, I love my country and I've lived here almost all my life, except I lived 9 years in the States. But one thing you start learning is that the only people that make money in commodities are the ones that have been doing it for 50 years or so. I mean, Colombia was selling coffee at $3.50 a pound almost 15 years ago. And then Brazil, Vietnam, all these other guys started to sell coffee. And now coffee is $1.20. We clap every time it goes to $1.25. But, it makes very little sense that we are always in this commodity business, which is where cannabis is going to go. And all we want to do is just keep growing and growing and growing instead of trying to take advantage of the fact that we can create a lot of science, that we have a big population, that we can make tremendous economics. And that's why we didn't want to build this company like that. We said, even back then, I know you've heard me say this before, but even with my partners, like, why do we want to grow coffee at $1 a pound when we can sell Starbucks coffee for $5 a cup? And I think today we see that every day. And what's worse is that there's a Starbucks coffee next to my house in Colombia. So, and I doubt they sell Colombian coffee. I'm sure it's probably all Vietnamese and Brazilian. So it makes no sense. And I think, that lesson of the commoditization of our economy that always stayed with us, why not create much higher value added and get the economics of growing in Colombia, of course, which is always 12-hour sunlight, things like that. Just keep it for ourselves. Why would we give it away to sell to somebody for 10 cents a gram when we can just sell our product for $5 a gram and keep the economics to ourselves? And that's sort of, even when we started, why we named the company Khiron. The company is not named marijuana anything or cannabis anything. It's called after the Greek centaur that taught Hercules medicine. He's a patron saint of pharmacy. So from the beginning, we thought the company has to be B2C. No point in selling commodity coffee or bananas or roses. Let's try to add more value, because we gotta get tired of just being the garden of the rest of the world.
However, this hasn't been the easiest of journeys for you, right?
No.
I mean, there in the beginning, just to get your licenses and all of the things that were required to operate, bank accounts, all of that stuff, challenging, right?
Yes. I mean, you have to remember, Tim, that in Colombia, I would say that Khiron is a pioneer of everything. So everything we've had to do is the first time ever being done. We're the first company to get a license under the new regulations, the first company to get some of these, the evaluation of our genetics, first company to be able to sell it in Colombia. So that challenge always tough because you have nobody else is teaching you how to get it done. But I have a team of people here that surround me, my teammates, that are all about breaking new ground. So as tough as it is, it's also very rewarding, the fact that you're already breaking so much ground and gaining so much for more advantage. But I used to have a lot more hair before the company started. I can promise you that.
So, I mean, I credit this the fact that you are still here, and I believe stronger than ever.
Ooh.
But it's not just you; it's your whole team, right? It's. I mean, well, you have
the one thing, team. This is not the first time I've been running companies, and when you're running a company like this that is so groundbreaking, that you're trying to motivate everybody, first you have to start with a purpose. If our purpose was to bring and cultivate cheap cannabis, I don't think I would even get half of the amazing team that I have, because what's motivating about that? But when you're talking about to my teammates and to my team, that we are here to improve the quality of life of people. And we see every day people who were suffering a lot, who are, thanks to Khiron and our clinics and all of this, have now improved their lives, and they tell us, and that creates a sense of purpose. That's how you can capture and bring in a team of people that are not just very smart, but also very, resilient. which is what you need in this business quite a lot. So, I think everything that we've been able to do is because of this amazing team that we've been getting since we started. And I think we're able to get a lot of really good energy because everybody knows that what we do matters. And when you're able to understand that what you do matters, and it's going to matter for us. I mean, we will all be patients of this one day, all of us, or our parents or our neighbors. And when you can relate to that, or when you're a patient, like we have a lot of patients in the company, that's what really builds a team. And it's exciting because even when we started, when everybody was telling us, why don't you just sell cheap weed because it's easier? And we keep saying, no, we want to go after the patient. We're going to do everything that we can do to make sure that patient has that unit. And now it's thousands of patients. We grow every day. I think that's what builds a lot more reward for my team. And this happens in Colombia, in Peru, in Brazil, in UK, Germany. And it's exciting to be working with such a motivated group of people.
So yeah, what I think is, and you and I have talked about this before, what I think is interesting is that there are companies out there that are just solely focused on the science, and they want to prove that, they're taking the right path. I'm not discrediting their path at all. They're taking the right path, and they want to prove that THC or any of the other components of cannabis do help people that are suffering from pain or psychological disorders, depression, PTSD, all kinds of different use cases have been documented, right? And I think that's an admirable goal. It's an expensive goal. You got to go through phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, clinical study, all that. And that's great. You can come out with the drug, but if you don't have the customer base and yes, you have a differentiated product, but the customer base is still difficult to obtain because you still have to go through, especially if it's a drug that has to be prescribed, you have to go through the doctor, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes doctors are so used to prescribing the opioid or whatever else has been used for that, they don't make that transition very easily, right? What you've done is built the relationship with the doctors, and you're teaching them the benefits of cannabis, right?
Yes. Well, when we started, I think you just nailed it on the head. We looked at it 3 alternatives, right? You can go after the supply and go and build as much as you can of it because somebody will buy it. You can go after the science, which is very valid, of course, and try to figure out what it can work. Or in our case, we said, all of these other things can be solved if we can own the demand. Because if we don't generate demand, it won't matter how much supply there is. It will be very expensive to develop the new medication, the hundreds of millions of dollars that it actually takes to do this. And you will have a nice pipeline of maybe great potential things with lots of patents, things like that. But if you're not selling and you're not creating a brand, do investors have enough time and appetite to trust you for the next 10 years to do this? So, we decided we're going to go, the evidence is there for the iPhone 1. So why don't we sell the iPhone 1 very well? Let's try to sell in as many places as possible. Let's try to create the evidence based on that. Let's come up with a really good product based on that design. And once the demand starts to happen, once we continue to sell every single day, once we have a path to sustainability, then we'll be able to use all of these funds that we're getting so that we can then look at what the iPhone 2, the iPhone 10 will look like. And I think I'm not at all apologetic for that strategy. I was reading an article yesterday. People were sending me about COVID and cannabis, right? And you're thinking it would be so nice to research that. I just don't have enough. I don't have $100 million to do that. And I'd rather focus on selling $100 million so that then we can then look and see what's going to be the state of the art 2 years later, now that we own all these patients, that we're able to have those relationships. And it's like, Spotify or Amazon, you can always introduce and innovate, but you have to innovate based on something that you're building. And for us, it's always been about demand. And we spend a lot of capital in training doctors and showing them the evidence. And I cannot imagine trying to do the three things at once, being able to build hundreds of hectares, come up with new molecules for cannabis to treat, COVID-19, and then try to persuade doctors. I think we have to choose one. In our case, we chose demand. I think the strategy that we've chosen is showing those results. And, one day when we are in all of these countries selling and making all of these millions of dollars that we are making today, but much bigger, then we can come back and say, okay, what's the state of the art? Let's go after it, because that will be what we need for the next 5 years. But, for us, it was a demand and still the demand. And because we got to create that trust with the patient. And once those patients, doctors trust us, then we'll be able to introduce many more things. And by then, I'm sure there will be lots of new ideas and new conditions that we will want to treat.
So I think the real important takeaway here is that you are building a brand. And I know for a fact, I've seen videos on your site of customers, consumers that really feel as though you've changed their lives, right? You've helped them appreciate or enjoy the day a little bit nicer because they're not feeling the pain, right?
Yeah.
You've impacted a lot of people's lives, and you are building that brand and you're building that trust, right?
Yes.
And that takes a long time sometimes to get.
It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of patience. I think it tests a lot of resolve because, you have to wait months until your patient starts telling you they feel better. And you cannot, you have to continue building upon that. But, every day that we see in our Instagram, or that you see in our Instagram, you see in our clinics, more and more patients saying, this was so good for me. That's just snowball effect of more people coming to our clinics and more people feeling better about what we do. And I think that's just very positive. And, we just have to keep doing it. We have to get a couple more regulatory wins on our backs.
So let's talk about, speaking of wind at your back, let's talk about the announcement that you just had recently, which wasn't really, maybe it wasn't picked up by the street, but right now, as I've told you, microcap and small cap stocks really doesn't matter what you announce. You're in a bad sector, but you had a pretty important announcement last week or at the beginning of the year, about the change in Colombia. See, because you've had to do more than just educate customers and more than educating doctors. You've also had to educate insurance companies, right?
Yeah. A lot.
So this is like a three-part deal. It's like not one easy, man, we're in. You can't just sell the customer. You got to sell the doctor that's going to prescribe it. But you also have to sell the insurance companies that are going to cover it, right? Yeah. So what happened? What was the recent announcement?
So, for the last 2 years, I always said that for cannabis to be truly disruptive, it's got to be covered, because otherwise opiates will always win. Opiates are free. You can get poison, but they're always going to be free. We've been working with the government, showing them the evidence, and we got the government of Colombia to agree that medical cannabis is a mandatory covered medication by any insurance company in Colombia for whatever condition for all these 50 million people that we have in this country. That is almost more meaningful than the day that Colombia legalized medical cannabis. Because what that means from now on is that any patient in Colombia can have a more seamless process to get any insurance coverage to pay for medical cannabis. And in Colombia, we have almost 98% insurance coverage of the population. So this means that the pie just got a lot bigger, and that the challenges for access are a lot lower. This means that probably Colombia and Germany are one of the few countries in the world where medical cannabis is covered. Can you imagine what that would be like for the Canadian, medical cannabis industry if Canada covered it? But it's crazy that Colombia takes this step. Colombian government, what they see is an opportunity to create an industry and also to save money. Instead of opiates, let's do medical cannabis produced in Colombia. What's not to like? And you're right, it hasn't been really that noticed in the markets, but in the country, which is really what matters. In the end, what matters is that I sell more, that we make a lot more money, and we make a lot more profits. On that, it's incredible how in the last couple of weeks, patients, insurance, doctors are like, well, this is a real medication. If the government of Colombia has decided that it's now mandated coverage, and if I get a prescription to whomever insurance and they have to pay for it, this is huge. And I think for Khiron, the fact that we have that first mover advantage, it's going to mean for us a hell of a lot, because every plan that we had was just based on the previous rules, which basically meant that we had to go insurance by insurance to get them to cover it. And it's a long, painful process that only Khiron has done. But now it just opens it up a lot more. And I think we are very well positioned to take advantage of that, and keep increasing the size of the pie. And of course, there will be a lot more players that can come in, which is great for me as well. But we'll maintain that leadership that we've had. So it's just amazing what it means in terms of access. And it means also, with that nugget, if I can leave you, it's going to be as easy as prescribing ibuprofen. And you think about that, for 6 million people in Colombia that suffer from chronic pain, hey, I think it's going to mean a lot for our business in the next, decades, because this is not going to go away.
No.
And the entire opiate industry in Latin America is more than $2.5 billion.
So,
Colombia does it. Imagine when Mexico does it. No? So,
is it also, and I don't know this, so I'm asking, is it also for mental, like depression, any conditions like that? Is it?
There's no indication by the government of what it can be used for. It's really
because depression is something with the COVID that people are experiencing, right?
And today in our clinic, almost 10% of the patients that go there are for mental health, and they use cannabis for it. So, there's a big need for it, particularly now.
Right. So just to be clear, there were insurance companies that you had that would cover in Colombia prior to this announcement, and that was all through your efforts. Long, painful process, right?
Yes.
So you're way ahead of the game when it comes to dealing with the insurance companies. And now that they've all been mandated that they have to accept it, now it's no longer a long, painful process for you. It's just a matter of submitting and say, hey, this is it, right?
Yeah, the reason I think what's going to matter now is about access, distribution. How do they sell it? How do they pick it up at the pharmacy? It's just more logistics, which we know how to do. But the reason we started this business with the clinics team that we have is because we have so much data on how good it is and how cheaper it is, that information is what we are conveying to the insurance companies, to the government, which is the entire reason why medical cannabis got.
But when you're saying cheaper, you're talking about the cost of prescribing cannabis as opposed to an opioid, or
exactly, opposed to an opiate, tramadol, pregabalin, and the cost of the ERs for overdosing. When you put all of that together versus medical cannabis, and then you add on top of that medical cannabis is better for health-wise overall, it's a win-win situation. And we were able to show the government all of this and the insurance companies, and this is why the government took that step. So, as exciting as this is, what's really even more excited is we're going to take all of this information. We're going to take what the government of Colombia did, and we're going to show all this information to the rest of Latin America. And if you think Colombia is going to be excited, 2 years from now, Mexico will cover it. And I can say that because I know that the level of evidence we'll be building then is going to allow us to do that. And that's where the market is going to be even bigger than what we can dream of. And I think companies like Khiron, or company like Khiron, who is leading on that, is going to take advantage of all this hard work. Maybe I'll even get some to put on a little bit more hair.
Well, the way I view it is that you were right. You started this out by saying this is not a fad. This is not going to go away, right? This is it's going to become more validated. The companies that are doing the studies with the drugs and trying to come out with the a cannabis based drug, and it becomes proven, all that's going to do is show that it works, right?
Yeah.
I don't think there's all these people out there, even if it's a placebo effect, it still is working, right, for people.
Yeah.
And you can't take that away from anybody, right? I mean, if they feel like it's working for them, it's working, right?
Exactly. Yes.
So, I look at it like this: you're building this relationship with all the key components, the doctors, the insurance companies, the customers. Ultimately, the customer is who determines success. That's my belief. But those companies that come out with those approved drugs, why wouldn't they partner with somebody like you, who has their foot in the door with all of these, right? That becomes, to me, you become the channel, you become the distribution for their new drug, right? Or else they're going to have a very long road of trying to get where you are.
Well, the toughest part of all of that type of analysis is the population. And what takes longer and what's more expensive is how do you get the patients to get onto these programs? Now, a company like us, that we've seen more than almost 20,000 individual patients, 20,000 of which 70% are chronic pain, and then the 30% are mental health, neurology, epilepsy, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, fibromyalgia, all of these type of conditions. You can run all of these things on those type of patients because you know where they are, you know what they're suffering, you know what they're doing, and you also know what they're looking for, which is always going to be a little bit, how do we do more efficacy, more efficiency? Once people realize, and all these potential companies and partners, here's a company that has all those patients that trust that company.
And all that data.
Then you become not just a partner, you become the company that's going to say, okay, this is what we want to do next. Who's got that? And then we'll get it done.
Right. No, I love it. So let's talk about, there's a big decision that happened down in Mexico. They legalized cannabis. Is that done? Is it completely done? It's legalized in Mexico, right? Or no?
No, the government still, the Congress is still waiting to legalize adult use cannabis. Medical use, though, is already been legal for the last year. And what we are all working on is getting that permit, that approval to get and sell that first CBD or THC. I would say that Khiron, in that sense, that we are very way ahead of the curve in that discussion of getting into Mexico. I mean, remember, we were the first company to start in Colombia, first company to start in Peru, first company to sell in Scotland. So being the first company in Mexico, being one of the first, is not going to be that far-fetched for us. They just came back from holiday. We'll see how it goes. I think Mexico is going to be potential very good news for us in this first quarter to begin in such a big market. And as I said to the team, is sometimes the longer it takes, the more robust our business will be. So once we deploy in Mexico, we're going to deploy all of it, the clinics, the data, the doctors. I mean, we've been training. We have more than 250 doctors trained in Mexico already. We have several partnerships in place so we can establish our clinics in different hospitals all across Mexico. We have the patients. We know what the patients are already. We know who the doctors who are going to be prescribing are. And right now, all we're waiting, which sounds very simple, but it's not, is getting that first product into Mexico. But once we get there, which I'm very confident that we'll be there very soon, I think we'll be able to build the same first mover advantage we have in Colombia. We'll be able to do it in Mexico. And that's really all I can say about it. But I think hopefully over the next 2 months, we'll be talking about Mexico and our quick wins, which are mostly regulatory, but from the rest.
We can say who you've had some help from in Mexico, which is the former president of Mexico, Vicente Fox, right? That's public knowledge.
Vicente has been instrumental for us. I mean, it's not something, it's not something we talk about it often, just because our main concern is to make sure that our partners in Mexico, that the authorities, that we perceived as a very serious company. None of those relations could happen without Vicente. And I think once people realize what all of that will be, they will understand that partnership and that our mutual, we will be mutually benefiting from the fact that we got together almost 2 years ago. But all of that is happening also because of him, because in the end, we're not Mexicans, no? And we need somebody who understands the business side of Mexico to get us through the right doors, with the right partners, and that helps us to build credibility. And I think that's what he's been able to do for us.
All right, so I'm just going through your slide here real quick to see if gross profits in Canada. Over quarter, 46%.
Yeah.
5 countries, 15 health centers globally, right? Reach 1 million patients and consumers by 2024. Now, was this slide put together before the Colombia news or after?
No, our goal of 1 million patients by 2024 is a goal I set out 4 years ago for the company, the first time we all met. And these slides were put up before the news from Colombia.
So let's put some numbers on this. So 1 million, what is the average per month cost basis per customer, per patient?
I'll give you 2 numbers, Steve. Let's talk about Colombia.
Okay.
Because our company is now selling 5 different countries, so this number changed a bit. But our 2 biggest markets for this year in 2021 are Colombia and Germany. Those are the 2 biggest markets.
Okay.
For medical cannabis, Colombia will represent almost 65% of the sales of cannabis, and Germany will represent 30% of the sales, something like that. But in Colombia, a patient today spends almost anywhere between 70 US and 80 US a month.
Okay.
Let's say 75, just for simplicity's sake. When we started a year and a half ago, or almost 2 years ago, a patient was spending only $50 or $45 a month, and now they spend 75. And this is because of insurance coverage. So with these new rules, that's going to increase a lot more. So we have a lot more patients that are really believing in this and are increasing their monthly expenditure, which is great for us, of course. In Germany, a patient spends we get almost 6.5 euros per gram of dry flower. So the expenditure in Germany versus Colombia is almost 3 times as much on a monthly basis. But in Colombia alone, we've been able to increase the monthly ticket. And that is what's driving our sales. It's driving our profitability because, for the same patient, we are able to sell more. And it's because of the insurance coverage. It's because it works. It's because they like the service. It's because we have a lot more patients who are coming back. Just last December, 2 out of 3 patients that got cannabis were returning patients. And when you have something like that, and you can forecast your production and your cost, that's why we're able to have such a great margin. And so when we talk about 1 million patients and the way that we look at it, we're looking, well, maybe by when that happens, will be 50-50 Latin America and Europe. Let's say in Latin America, as we see today, a patient will be able to spend $75 a month. And that's true information. Let's say that in the UK, for instance, where we also sell, a patient spends almost 120 pounds per month. Pounds. So that means over an average anywhere between $90 and $100 a month of medical cannabis. Over an average, what we can see is that out of the 12 months, there would be 9 months of patients being able to buy, because some patients, it doesn't work. For some others, it does. It's a big number, getting 1 million patients, active patients. And for that from where we are to that, what we need to do is add 10% more patients every month for the next 2.5 years. And if you compare that with the average acquisition of patients that we've had in the last 12 months, that's almost half the growth rate that we've been experiencing the last year and a half. So, we're not shooting for the stars here, but even if we get only half of it, that would be a company that has tremendous revenue base. When every patient is spending $100 US a month, who wouldn't want that? No, and with those margins, we just have to visualize it, and just to get there, we have to get one patient at a time, and that's what we do. Every day we sell more than the day before in all the jurisdictions. So, it's just, we have the conversation a year from now, then we'll be able to visualize much bigger.
The way I see it is this news that has come to light in Colombia. How many did you say there was? How many patients did you said were dealing with chronic pain? 6 million. You could do 1 million in Colombia all by itself, right?
Hey, yeah, we could, because
that's not reaching for. That's not a stretch by any imagination, right? And then I think you had a statistic in your release about conversion to becoming, a regular, consistent patient when they have coverage is far greater.
Today, let's call it in December, let's say the last 2 weeks, our conversion is about 60. The percentage of patients that are from insurance are about 65-70%. In Q4, we doubled the number of patients that were coming from insurance from Q3. And this is because patients are realizing, hey, this works for me, and you tell me it's free. I no longer have an excuse not to get it. And before the end of, last year, it just took a couple of more days to get all this process going. Now that it's gonna be so much easier, there's even less excuses. So the conversion and the retention, particularly, I think that's really going to continue driving our business. And the more retention, it's always cheaper to keep an existing patient than to acquire a new one. So, welcome all that retention, because that means there's less efforts that we have to do for that patient that works, and they're buying more, right? So
right. See, I love the story. And I will tell you that there is, from the stock market perspective, right? It's definitely more of a risky type play, because Colombia, I think everybody's probably seen the movie or the series Narco, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right. So, but you understand what I'm saying. It's perception at times, right? So you actually have you got 3 things. Number one, in the United States, we're not even federally legal in the United States. We have a lot of states that have legalized it, but we're not federally legal yet. You still can't do business with a bank if you're in that business down here, right? So that's a challenge. Yeah. The cannabis space in itself is a challenge, right? Then you have the Colombia component, which makes it more challenging because it's from a different country that doesn't have necessarily the best reputation, right, in terms of cartels and stuff like that. So it makes people nervous, right? But in my mind, the higher the risk, the higher the reward, right?
True.
So, and being early, right? Sometimes being early is painful because you're still going through those growing pains. But if you have vision as to where things are going, I do believe that at some point we are going to be fully federally legal here, right?
Yeah.
And you've been working on this. I mean, you took the biggest risk of all, right? you were the first one in Colombia and the first one to get insurance coverage. I mean, you took the biggest risk of all, but the pieces are starting to fall into place, right? And the data that you're collecting and the education that you're receiving is invaluable, right? Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, it's really, I think like all of these factors that you're saying are correct. I think these are about what the puck is going to be, like Wayne Gretzky used to say, no? And if you look at a company like Khiron, forget about the Colombia thing for a second, because once we sit here next year in this same date, we'll be talking about Europe selling almost as much as Latin America. And we'll be talking about a company that's selling Germany, UK, that's already doing that, probably even higher than Colombia. 2 years from now, the only thing you'll get from me being Colombian is my accent, because the company will be extremely global. And I think that's also why we got into Europe. I got into Europe because when I was starting this company, team, every time I was pitching to get the next $100,000 raised, the first 5 questions are about narco season 1, 2, 3, 4, season Mexico 1, 2, and now 3. And I kept saying to myself, to the team, it's, the world is changing. The biggest beer company in the world is not American, it's Brazilian. I don't know if you know that, but it's Brazilian 3G bought Brahma, bought Inver from Belgium. Then they bought Anheuser-Busch from the United States, and now they bought AB Miller. The world is no longer north to south, and that's what I learned when I was in the United States. The world is open to people who want to look at different opportunities and look where the park is going to be. Right now, everybody's focused in the United States, Canada. The Canadian market sucks. Cannabis companies haven't really done it. The US companies are focused on the MSOs. But there's a market that's not just Colombia. It's going to be Europe. It's going to be Latam, Mexico, and Brazil. And the only thing we'll have to remind about ourselves from Colombia is where we came from. But I really believe that the fact that we decided to go into Europe, we're going to be de-risking our business this year, because we are able to speak in 5 different languages. I know many companies in the world that can sell cannabis in 5 languages. In English, Spanish, Portuguese, German. It's going to be very unique for us. And so I think the opportunity is that, yes, we've done all the hard work so far. I still have to get into Mexico. We'll get there soon. But once sort of that regulation is done, there's nowhere to go but up. And I think all the pains of being Colombia, being branded Colombia, I think we will forget about it, because in the end, you're going to be seeing a lot of sales, you're going to be seeing a lot of revenues, and then you're going to look at these companies owning these markets while everybody else was fighting for North America. And so that's sort of, a year from now, I think when we're back here again talking, we'll talk about Germany, and wow, I cannot believe, we have a clinic in the UK now. I was telling somebody in Colombia last week, how does a Colombian company based out of Colombia have the guts to go out there and open a clinic in the UK? I'm like, well, because we know how to convince doctors to prescribe cannabis, and they could speak Spanish, Portuguese, or English. There's something very unique about this company that it would be foolish for us not to try to do it elsewhere just because we're Colombian based. No? And so, that is sort of the way I look at what the puck is going to be. It's going to be global. It's not going to be about Colombia. It's going to be about 2 big regions in euros, in pounds, in Colombian, Mexican peso, Brazilian real. And you're going to be able to own all these patients. That's when the real global opportunity will emerge once the United States legalizes and all of these things happen. Everybody's going to start looking south, and we're going to be looking sideways. Like, guys, our market is bigger than yours. So I know it sounds optimistic, but that's sort of what we've always thought about building the next.
You know what? That's what I love about you, is that you are optimistic, and I know the challenges, and we don't have time to go through them all, but I know the things that you have faced and overcome. And one of the things that is a very common theme with me is I think you can have a great product, you can have a great service. If you don't have great leadership and a great team, I think the odds are stacked against you, and you're probably going to fail. Okay. Yeah. And that's why it's so important for me to get to know leadership, right? Because I want to look leadership in the eye. I want to get a good feel for their vision. I want to understand it clearly. And I want to believe that they have the skill set to execute the vision, right? And get it done. And actually, those things you don't determine, those are only shown over time, right? Anybody can tell you a great story. I mean, there's a lot of people that are really good at selling sizzle. They're horrible at bringing the steak. They never bring the steak, right?
Yeah.
I've never had a CEO that has met with me and said, you know, Tim, we're a really shitty company. We're never going to make money. We're going to dilute the shit out of you until your eyes bleed. And, you know, but I want you to invest your money with us. I've never had anybody say that, right? Everybody always has a great story. And, but then you learn that they're not a very good at executing or putting together a strong team, right? Or getting everybody to see the vision. And I think what's very clear to me is that you have done extremely well, right?
Thank you.
And you are a very driven, passionate person. And if anybody can't recognize that from this interview, well, then they don't know what passion is, right?
I can bet you, Tim, that the level of passion I put to this business is small percentage of what my team delivers to our patients, and I think that's extremely motivating because we're working in a company where the more that we see real effects of what we do, that's sometimes more important than the stock price in the end. That's what really gets me motivated. No, that we have such a motivated team because they see the results of it. So hopefully one day you'll be able to come here. You'll realize that sometimes I'm not even good enough at showing how much passion this team has for what we do, because it's really hard. Everything we do is so new and complex, but we do it with such joy because it matters for a lot of people. And I'm glad that you see the passion that we have. Sometimes you have to just mix passion with some smarts, and it's not just about passion, but the perseverance. And I think being perseverant for us, it's extremely important because it's easy to just fall apart when things don't happen.
Listen, I know, because I mean, we have somebody that's actually kind of like in the shadows right now on this interview that is part of your team that I think is invaluable, right?
Oh yeah,
Paula, I know you're there.
I'm here.
I have to tell you, I meet with a lot of companies, and I very rarely, well, I can tell you, I don't have really anyone that does as thorough of a job of recapping what we discuss, sending me notes from the meeting that we had, and addressing things that maybe we didn't have an opportunity to discuss, right? That Paula, I've said this to you before, you do an amazing job. And that's part of the passion, right? It's not just Alvaro. I mean, and Paula actually conveyed to me that, that's the way that it is throughout the entire organization, right? That everybody's almost more like a family than it is a company. And to me, that's powerful stuff, right?
Well, I think nothing builds teams, families, or things than challenges, right? Tim, I think, Paola is the third employee of the company. I mean, when she joined this, we were in a small, I think it was 20 square meters or something like that, and she helped me write the license. She was working with Juan Diego, a VP of regulation. We had to do everything. She learned accounting just so that we could do the translation with the Colombian accountants for the Canadian markets. I mean, we've had to roll our sleeves on everything, and every single little milestone that we get, it's just great to be working with a bunch of people that believe it, and that builds a lot more team, because the next challenge is always going to be tougher than the current before. But you want to look around and say, I want to go to war with these people, which is what we have to do almost every day. You have to battle it out with everybody, the markets and the regulators and the insurance companies and the doctors. But then once every so often you get little gains, and you get little wins. And those wins are not things that maybe the market will understand, like this Colombia thing. but it means so much for us because we all know how long it took. We all remember that first conversation 2 years ago, and we all remember we're gonna get it done. And once you're able to say to your team, remember how we all said we're gonna get it done, and some of us even doubted even then, and today we got it done. So now we're gonna do this. So I think that's just really exciting.
So I mean, that's what it's really powerful, right? I mean, you took the risk, but the vision is, the pieces are falling into place. No matter how long it's taking or how small they may be, the jigsaw puzzle is coming together, right? And you're starting to get a better feel, and it just validates. I think it's got to be empowering in a way, right?
Well, Tim, it's sort of recapping what we said before. If this is not a fad, and this is going to be here for hundreds of years, a couple of months won't hurt. If you think that cannabis is over in 5 years, then yes, you have to run. And if oh my God, it's been 2 months, you're too delayed, which is what investors are always thinking about, I guess. But if you really understand this is not going anywhere, and this is going to be here to stay, and you're talking, and your time frame now starts to change for the next 20 years, and you say, well, I have to wait another couple of months to get into Mexico. But that's the sort of the way we look at it. We are always in a rush. There are things that we cannot control, but the outcome is going to be here for a long time. And so we just have to keep at it and just keep motivating everybody on it. But it takes time. It takes time, but it's not going to end tomorrow. And it's not going to end soon. And probably it's never going to end. And by the time people start counting their bills, they'll see, well, this company had to wait a couple of years to get it done. But who wouldn't want to be in their position? I don't know.
Let's not forget that this is all happening through a pandemic. A complete first, right?
Yeah.
For the entire world. And your company has managed to navigate this, right?
Yes.
And continue to grow, which is a pretty impressive feat in a pandemic.
Considering now that almost now all of us have got it too. So it's like, what else are you going to throw at us? Omicron, whatever's next, we'll deal with it. It was disruptive, and it's still disruptive every day. But it's like that movie Forrest Gump I told you, that when they're going out to shrimp and there's this big storm, and they almost die, and they come back to the harbor, and everybody else boat is destroyed. That's how I feel. I think that we've been doing this in these worst of times, but we're very resilient, and we'll probably be one of the left ones standing there with our very clear business model. And I don't want to sound arrogant at that. We're just saying that all the hard work that we do, even going above and beyond, is paying off, because everybody else just thought this was about selling cheap weed. And turns out it's not. Doesn't matter how cheap you sell it, even if you sell it for free, nobody's buying it unless somebody's building it. So, we just have to go through that. But one day we'll be able to look past and say, wow, we got it done in COVID. I mean, I told you when we met, we got the permit to sell cannabis in Colombia the day before we shut down the country for 6 months. And I say this to everybody in the company, because if that is not serendipity, I don't know what is. If we don't take this as a sign that we have to be better and we have to work harder, because this doesn't happen to companies who are lazy. This happens to companies who are non-complacent. And we have a responsibility to do better because of that. Because we got it the day before, because we had to wait 3 days, because we have to do the impossible to get it done. It would be a shame for us now to lay back and say, well, now we are selling cannabis. No, I mean, the fact that we got it done, the fact that all these things happen, pandemic happened, so we keep going after Peru, that we got our first product registered, that we have our clinic in the UK, all of these things, that we started selling in Germany, we have a responsibility for ourselves to be even better. I think that's part of the culture of the company. And we always remember those dates, every single thing. You come to my office, I have photos of every single first patient we service in every single country. And it's just a reminder that we got it done in very difficult circumstances, that this patient is doing really well now, but there's another 1 million people out there that still requires to go and do the same. And so I think that sense of non-complacency is something that we can never lose, because the day we lose that, that's the day we will probably stop growing. And that cannot happen. That cannot happen.
No, it's what's the old saying? If it doesn't kill you, it makes you it only makes you stronger, right?
Yeah.
And when I look at a company like yours, and I look at the leadership, and I look at the passion, and I look at the challenges that you've had, and there's a lot of them. That's, I wasn't pointing out the Colombia thing as a deterrent from people. I'm pointing it out to say, look, this is a company that's an underdog, right? And personally, I love underdogs, right? I like to root for underdogs, as opposed to, the guys that have already gotten fat and happy. I mean, if you look throughout corporate history, there are a lot of big companies that were the 800-pound gorillas, and, they failed to recognize the little guy that came along and wound up putting them out of business. Like, for example, Blockbuster, right? Nobody recognized that Netflix might be a problem, right? Fuji, Kodak. Nobody recognized that the camera phone might be a problem, right? Now you're looking at big pharmaceutical companies that are creating opioids and killing people, and creating a huge, in its own right, pandemic, right? Where people are addicted to drugs that ultimately wind up taking their lives. So, I mean, that is a big industry that I think is going to be impacted by this, right? I don't know of many people that are dying from overdosing on marijuana, right? Or cannabis or CBD or THC.
And we are actually today, even in Colombia and in Peru, we are replacing opiates with cannabis, and we're writing the evidence on that. That's very powerful stuff.
Right.
One day, pharmaceuticals will look back and say, "Hey, can we do something together?" And maybe not today, but it will happen. It will happen.
Right. So all of these challenges that you have, and you guys are growing. And I think you're building that brand, you're building that name, you're building the trust with all the way up and down the chain, right? Yeah. Customers, insurance companies, doctors.
Yeah.
That is where I think the future is the greatest, right? So I want to real quickly talk about the stock and the chart, which is not a pretty chart.
Thanks.
But that's okay, because you know what? There's a lot of charts out there right now in this space that are not pretty. I mean, that's just the reality of it. Okay. But what I can tell you is there's something interesting happening here. And if you can see, this is a long-term trend line from 2019, got up to about 3 and change. And then right now we're down. We just hit the new 50 to all-time low, actually, which was down about 12 cents, right? But what is interesting is, and I'll just for a technical standpoint explain this to you. There are areas that become support and areas that become resistance, right? So you can see back here, what was this, back in 2021, the 25-cent range was really holding up as support for you guys for a while. All right. And then once you cracked below that, that became resistance. You can actually see here, it acted as support. And then over here, it was trying to get back above it, and it couldn't. Okay. And now you've gone and you've made a new low. Now, here's what I would not be totally shocked if the stock were to come back down and test that low of 12 cents. And here's why. A lot of times it's just validating. Actually, the retest is a good thing. If it comes down and it tests it and it holds it, it almost validates that as being the floor. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. It does.
So you come back down, you test it. Typically that would happen on a lower volume, right? Lower volume. Maybe sometimes if there's somebody playing around in the stock, they might pierce it for the day, like take out the low, but then close above that low. In other words, it's kind of like a little, what they do is when an area of support gets identified, a lot of people will put their stops just below that area of support. And then really smart guys will say, you know what? I'll bet there's a whole bunch of stops below this area of support. I think we'll flush the stock and then we'll pick up all those stops, right? And pick up all those cheap shares. That's why by the end of the day, it closes back up above, right? So that can often be like the reversal sign. It's like, boom, this is now it gets interesting. But what I think is interesting about the chart is actually you're kind of breaking this long-term trend line. Now, this is an established trend line that's been in for a long time, right? And that's the most dominant trend. The most powerful trends are trend reversals. What that means is you finally take out that long trend that's been going from the upper left to the lower right. And now you're starting in possibly a new trend that's going from the lower left to the upper right. And these trends, once they're broken, can last a very long time, right? So I'm just going to point out that you just had what I would call a pretty significant news release of the Colombian government mandating that every insurance company start coverage for marijuana and CBD related items. So I would say that's one catalyst. Now you have the potential of something happening in Mexico in the next 2, 3, 4 months, whatever. Yeah. That would be another catalyst, right? You've got Europe. You've got things happening there. That could be another catalyst, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All these catalysts could then lead to this new trend, right? So let me ask you this. This is where everybody's going to be concerned. How are you on cash?
Well, I think, we closed Q3 with almost 50 and a half. Right now, the way we are focused on our business today, it's on recovery and being able to collect the cash from our clients as fast as we can. Because as great as it is to be selling all this much, we need to be able to collect the cash from insurance companies much faster. It takes almost 2.5, 3 months. And that's really what I'm looking for this next couple of weeks, couple of months. The way we're looking at our business without this Colombia, news before this happened, we were looking to get into that sort of cash flow neutrality, area by the end of this year, and being able to deploy our capital right now just to be able to build more clinics in Colombia, which we're building 2 that will be ending in January, and 1 in Brazil. Today, when we look at our cash position, it's really how do we bring those revenues, that cash flow from those revenues that we're getting from Colombia and Germany much faster, so that we can pay for our receivables. But it's not something that's concerning to us. But I think for the more we keep growing, what we're looking is, can we look at regular corporate type of instruments? Can we go for Colombian working capital loans so that we can get that cash much faster, so we can align our expenses with our revenues? I would say generally that our cash is not being used to build anything or to try to sustain an unsustainable business. It's really, once we get to, let's call it the 10,000 units a month in Colombia, that's almost $600,000 of revenue a month by March, hopefully. And that's almost all profit. But it takes us, 3 months to collect it. But our payroll for the entire company is about $800,000, $700,000 a month if you look at the financial statement. So the faster we can match those, the easier it will be for us to get into that cash flow neutrality. But there's a difference between working capital, Tim, and needing capital to survive. We're not in survival mode.
Right.
What we are here is on, working capital mode. How can we save? How can we bring those revenues much faster to our cash in so that we can get to that point by the end of this year? And it's a very different conversation because that means, we're a company that's never been, we don't have any debt. We have no major instruments.
Okay, repeat that for me one more time. You don't have any what?
We don't have any major corporate debt. We've never done any converts. We don't have any of those instruments. And I think that's because the company's always thought about once we see a path to profitability. Now there's a very different question of survival versus growing and being able to collect those monies faster. And I think that's where the company is at today financially. How can we collect faster? What type of avenues can we find so that we can match those big revenues that are coming with that cash collection so that we can continue to keep growing? The one I would say that Brazil and Mexico are the countries where we are still in that build-up mode when you're talking about cash use. We have a team there that's developing all these things. And that's why I'm so trying to move as fast as possible to get that first extra import there, because once that happens, that means we can start collecting and invoicing. But today the challenge is the timing of invoicing versus the type of cash collection. And that's a good problem to have, because that's always, that I've never had that problem. It's always been about not being able to sell. I mean, you look at 2020, team, we sold $350,000 Canadian of cannabis, right? At 85%. This year we'll do anything between 3.5 and 4 million Canadian at 85% gross profit. No? That means if we do the month of December, if we do that for the next 12 months, we can double that easy this year. But that also means that because it's mostly insurance, Colombia and Germany, that we do have 7 million out of it, or 70% out of it that are paid not right away. So how do we bring that balance together? I think that's really the challenge from a financial standpoint. I think we have plenty of tools at our disposal right now, and that's what the company is really focused on. We're not building more cultivation. I'm not interested in expanding our cultivation footprint. We have no really major inventory issues. We're trying to make sure that we can focus the company on that aspect. Collection, the more collection, the more cash we have in our books, and the less we need to worry about those issues. And then it's just going to be a matter of how fast can we grow and what type of tools can we use to make sure that we can support that growth.
Okay, so one of the things that I really like to highlight is no massive debt, because that is a killer of companies, right? And then
exactly.
And then what about insider participation? Does the insiders participate in the open market?
Yeah, I think if you look at the last 30 days, you'll see that myself, the chairman, and board members have purchased stock in the open market. No, and not in insignificant ways. I mean, on the other side of it, team, I do represent the largest shareholder of the company, and we haven't sold a single share. So it's not something that it has to work both ways, right? It's not that that's going to happen forever, but the point is that we see that the opportunity right now is so big, and yes, the stock price is depressed, and that's an opportunity for me as well, right? If I can buy 250,000 shares, as I did a couple of weeks ago at that price, why not? We just have to reduce the Christmas package for the family for that year, and that's it.
See, so let me just explain to you. Now, what you say makes so much sense, but why is it so important to me? Because I have CEOs, as I said, that I've met with and tell these great stories and tell me how their price is such a great value. And then I ask the question, well, how many shares are you buying in the open market? And they haven't bought any. As a matter of fact, not only have they not bought any, they sold some. So then I'm sitting there thinking to myself, well, wait a minute. Here you are trying to tell me what a great deal this is and how it's so cheap, and yet you're not stepping up to the plate. Where is the disconnect there, right? And then not only are you not stepping up to the plate, but you're selling shares. So that really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. If you're not buying it, why would I buy it?
Well,
you know better than anybody, right? I mean,
yeah.
I would think you would be buying it hand over fist if you think it's as cheap as it is. You know, I mean, if that's your view, right?
Well, I think that's the view from everybody, top management. Look at the insider reports. Just look at the last 30 days. It's probably the busiest we've had it as a top management since we started. So we're not wealthy people, Tim. My only equity is this company, and maybe if I had sold at $4 some shares, I would have some more money to buy back. But I didn't. We didn't because I believed that at $4 it was cheap, and I believe today it's ultra cheap. But even when it was at $4, I wasn't selling a single gram of cannabis. So when I look at it from a perspective, if the stock was at 4, when we were not Canadian, we had not sold a single gram, and today's at 25 cents Canadian, and we are selling almost 4 million in cannabis last year at 85% gross profits. There's nowhere for this company to go but up. And I think when I put in that perspective, we said with the team, as much as we've all cut our salaries, all of these things have happened. Why you wouldn't believe in this? Because we see it every day. And so, hopefully investors will appreciate that. I don't do it for them. I do it because I really believe it's a good deal for us, because one day we'll all sell shares, right? It's not more than normal. But I think today it's the right opportunity for all of us because, what we know, what we're going to be able to do this year and the next year, and knowing how many tools we have available, Jesus, I think this is the lowest that I've been able to buy it, and I think the upside for ourselves will be very big, and I think it also shows for our employees that there's a commitment, and I'm committed to this as one can be committed, because starting companies like Khiron, being an entrepreneur, is as personal as it gets. Between that and having kids, I don't know if many more things that are more personal. Maybe sometimes getting married, but you can always throw that out. But starting a company and having kids are the most personal things you can do. So why not bet on that if you know it's undervalued?
Absolutely. So I love it. I love this story. So let's real quickly, how many shares we got fully diluted? How many shares do we have outstanding?
I believe about 210 million fully diluted with warrants and things. I think that's the number.
So that is a little. I've told you this before, though. You know this. Once you start to get to a very bloated share count, I start to get nervous, right? And I don't think that this is overly bloated at this particular time. I would be concerned if there was, if you started to get up to 500 million shares, that to me is concerning, right? Because it makes it just that much more challenging to become profitable, right? And at some point, Alvaro, do you think that you're going to want to uplist to a senior exchange like the NASDAQ or something like that?
Well, Tim, I think that's it would be responsible for me not to think about it and how do we get that done. I think the rules of the bigger exchange in New York probably better than me. We have a couple of hurdles to go through. Particularly one is the share price to be able to get to that. On the other hand, I think when we do that, because that's probably in the cards in the next couple of years, when we do that, I don't think investors will have to ever worry about us getting out of it, which is what you see happening a lot with the cannabis companies. No, it's one, you celebrate the moment you get in, and then the next 6 months you're trying to struggle not to be delisted. And for us, it's once we're there, it's because we're showing execution, because people believe in the story. We'll have a lot more eyes on it and a lot more institutions. A lot of things will happen then. Right now, I would say that it would be ideal to be there, but the reality is that we have to do a lot of work with the stock and continue to build investor trust, and and that's work I'm willing to do with the team, because we know that we're selling and we know where we're going. So just be a little bit more patient with me, team. I'm sure, hopefully, we'll get there. But no, there's a lot of merits to being in a bigger board. It's just the hurdles to get there are somewhat today quite complex. But
yes, but it
simplified.
is something that you absolutely desire to have happen.
Yeah,
right? I mean, a lot of things are beyond your control. A lot of things have to fall into place. But, the way I view it is that, just uplisting to the NASDAQ is not exactly always the best path. I think when you choose to uplist, you want it to be when everything is aligned, when your sales are hockey sticking, when you have signed some massive contracts and, there is no sign of a slowdown, right? I mean, you want everything aligned that's showing that this is a company that deserves to be on the NASDAQ, not just because they want to be there, right? So you get one shot in my head to uplist. And then when you do that, you want it to be, all cylinders are firing, and this is a company that is on a trajectory that's going to continue this way for a while, right? I mean,
yeah. Well, you said yourself, Tim. I think it's, we have to get at some things behind our backs yet. I think 2022 will be that year for sure. And when you want to be there when people want to talk about you, right? You don't want to be there as another company. And you just said it yourself, when the market is so heavy towards 7, 8, 9 names, right? You're gonna be lost in that sea of opportunity. So, I think things have happened to this company at the right time. Even when we have to do tough choices in terms of financing, things like that. To be honest with you, as much as we always talk, we are here because we believe in this company, and sometimes you have to take some pains for it because the market is not rewarding anybody. But once we do these things in 2 years, we'll forget about all of this because these are the type of pains that companies like us have to go through when you're battling against every single variable imaginable. No, of course, if our stock was $3, nobody would be asking about dilution, but it's not. Right? But the real world has to keep executing. And I know what we're doing in terms of sales and patience. And that's very important for us. Once we get into those type of boards, we will be deserving it. And I think people will be very appreciative of that in the market as well. We just don't want to be another one. But once we're able to do this, the story will be very big with a lot of sales and hopefully cash flow positive. So who would like that? If I have to wait a couple of years to do that, I'm fine with that too.
Okay. All right, Alvaro, listen, you've given me a tremendous amount of your time, and I really, really appreciate it. Is there anything that I have missed that you feel as though you'd like to highlight before I wrap this up? Or
no, Tim, I think we spoke a lot, and thank you so much for the opportunity again. We are, just know that you have a very dedicated team behind you, and we not always making all the right calls. But it's all really focused on the opportunity that we see that would be foolish for us not to take advantage of. And that's what we're going to keep doing it. And, the pandemic will provide us with more surprises. God knows what they are, right? But, we will be able to weather them. And I think as long as we all remember, this medical cannabis thing is not a thing. It's a real disruptive business. The more we remember that, the more we'll see that a lot of these conversations, all these questions are, just short-term pains, but the opportunity is massive. And, companies like us who are focused on that, we're going to take advantage of that.
I love the story. I love the passion. I love the fact that you're an underdog, but you're driven, man. And this is, in my mind, a very exciting story. I can't wait to see what the results are from this news out of Colombia, and I can't wait to see what happens with Mexico in the next few months. But in my view, and I said it at the beginning, I am a shareholder. I am actually trying to build and add to that position. I am not telling anybody that's watching this that they should go out and buy the shares. That is something that you should do your own due diligence on. You do have an investor relations department that people can go and sign up and get a newsletter from you guys, correct?
Yeah, we have almost a monthly newsletter. I think our shareholders appreciate the transparency that we give to all of this news and information. Most of that is also very
And
public
then
information.
you've got Lithium Partners who also works with you. You've got, I think, Robert Breeze over there that if anybody wants to talk about Khiron with Robert, I know he's more than happy to hop on the phone and have a discussion. So, and I think this is going to be, I think one of the biggest things for small cap companies is being able to get your story out and people being able to understand or get to know leadership, right? And I think that's what this whole interview is all about. And I think we did a really, really good job. Hey there, all you stock market junkies. Thank you so much for tuning in to another CEO interview brought to you by Alpha Wolf Trading. This time with Alvaro Torres from Khiron Life Sciences, ticker symbol KHRNF, traded on the OTC exchange. If you enjoyed today's video, please do us a favor, give us a share, give us a like, and hey, why not give us a follow? Until next time, stay safe. I am Alpha Wolf Trading. Wish you the very best of success.